You're crazy here. Well, hello. Oh my goodness. And happy Friday. I'm so glad it's Friday. I don't know why. It just feels like, well, I have good plans for the weekend and I have wild hair today. So, welcome to our Facebook Live. I am Coach Diana on Leslie Vernick's coaching staff team, however you want to say that. And I'm really happy to be here with you today. I'm going to go live on Instagram right now, so just give me a minute. I'm also going to open up the comments section to see who is out there. So if you would welcome me with a hello, I'd be happy to know that you're there. I always appreciate audience engagement when we're doing these lives. It's so much easier for me to interact when I see you. Welcome. I see Texas has joined on Instagram. Welcome to you on YouTube as well. And those of you on Facebook. I want to remind you that this is a public Facebook page. So as you're commenting, be mindful that your comments are not confidential, in other words. And so just bear that in mind as you seek to comment with us and for whatever's on your heart and mind. As we want to welcome you, we want to know where you're calling in from. I'm in Northeast Ohio, and if you live in Northeast Ohio, you recognize that you can never predict the weather. And so we're having a warm day. I know we're going to get more winter, but I just want to say hello to you from there. And I want to ask you, I always like to ask this question, what interested you about our topic today? And the topic is you can quiet your inner critic. And we're going to talk a little bit about how. And so I'm wondering if you, good morning. Hi, Jeannie. I'm wondering what you think about the inner critic. Is the inner critic your friend, your foe? Is it constant? Do you ruminate over and over and over about, I don't know, all the nasty little things you can tell yourself? What's that conversation going on between you and you? What's been interesting for you about this topic? I'm just going to wait, let you join in with your comments and your chat. What's your experience with your inner critic? What do you notice? Are you even paying attention to what your inner voice is saying to you and about you? And I want to promise you that you're not stuck with that voice that tears you down. We're going to talk a little bit today about how to recognize it, how to challenge it, how to replace it with truth, and to see how it builds your inner strength, your emotional and your spiritual core. Yes, I see. Thank you for weighing in. What is your experience with your inner critic? Thank you. Hello from New Jersey. And I see Cindy saying that I often find myself ruminating and causing emotional fatigue. It's so good that you make that connection. That ruminating causes emotional fatigue. And if you've experienced emotional fatigue, you know that it's very physical as well. Emotional fatigue, the inability to really, I don't know, think thoughtfully. It wears you out. Your mind is constantly on overload. Welcome, Canada. And Sally's saying, trying to sift through the rules imposed on me versus biblical precepts. Sometimes your inner critic is trying to really sift through what applies, what doesn't apply. And Jeannie's confessing that the inner critic is the enemy. Yeah. And you know, it's so interesting you say that. She says, I could never accept a compliment and working on getting better. And, you know, it's so interesting. When I started really early on in my early 20s, I worked for a major corporation in East Cleveland here. And I had an older man that I was working with, and he would compliment me. And I had the hardest time accepting those compliments. And his goal, his name was Dan, his goal was to get me to just say thank you and receive it. And that was really a lot of the dialogue that we had together as we worked. It was interesting that he saw that in me, that I had a hard time just accepting that. And I want to say good afternoon from Virginia. Hi, Janice. Yeah. Well, this is interesting. You're identifying that you are your worst critic and you feel you can't do enough. There's so much awareness and so much that you can do with that right now. Write that down. I can't do enough. I criticize myself for not doing enough. That is the first key, is awareness. Naming it, labeling it. It does. It produces guilt. It produces shame. Now, guilt is I should be doing something more. Shame is saying I am bad. Guilt is saying I've done something bad. Shame is I am bad. So we want to differentiate that. And the interesting thing is Mary Lou's saying, I never live up to my or other standards. That's exhausting. And I want to say to you, if that's you, what are God's standards? Does God demand perfection? Or does he demand obedience? And what would that look like if you set aside perfection and you just sought to obey him, recognizing that we're not going to get it right, we're not going to get it perfect, and that's what grace and forgiveness is all about. Yeah. And so, Mercy, you're giving me such good prompts, ladies. Thank you so much. I'm just going to answer some of these right now before I dive in. When you feel like you can be doing more, is that your mind or is that your body? Is your mind saying you can be doing more? And are you checking in with your body to see what your capacity is? And then the question is, why can't I do more? And I say that to myself. I'm in a certain decade of my life. And, when my daughter is around, she's Speedy Gonzalez. And I used to be like that. And I think, as we age, we slow down. And I want to say to you that from the research that I've read, not currently, but a little while ago, that if you're older, your brain is slower. Like not your brain, but your ability to process is slower. And that's for a lot of reasons. One is you have a lot of information in there, but it is true we have slower processing speed. We have a vast amount of data compared to someone who's 30 years younger than us. Their brains move faster. Our bodies move slower. And that's okay. As we age, we slow down a bit. We can be more pensive. We have a lot more going on, a lot more breadth of knowledge than someone that's much younger than us. So don't feel bad about that. Yes, and often we have invited in other voices into our inner dialogue that don't belong to us. It could be the enemy via someone else in your life. And so we want to, with awareness, root that out. Yes. All right. So let's just dive in. And you know what? Toss some questions in the chat. I'll see if I can cover those. So I want to start with a question to you. So if this is familiar, I want you to type in the chat, yes, familiar. Have you ever replayed a conversation in your head and suddenly your own inner voice just starts criticizing you? And your inner voice might say to you, that's really stupid. You sounded stupid. Why did you even say that? You're so dumb. You're so lame. They probably think you're ridiculous. They really don't like you. If you've experienced any of that, just put, yep, that's me. I see some of you are really relating to that. Yeah. Yes. So I want to ask you a question, and we're going to move through this. So grab a pen and paper and just jot down some notes. You can always watch the replay. And for those of you that will be watching the replay, please add your comments into the chat as we move along as well. So just asking you, with some awareness, just take a pause. And I want to ask you, what does your inner critic say most often to you? As you take a pause and you think about that, what does my inner critic say most often? Type your answers in the chat. What does your inner critic say most often? My inner critic used to say, you can't do that. My inner critic used to comment quite a bit about my appearance. And I discovered that that inner critic that when I look in the mirror and would say, oh my gosh, you look so old, or look at that wrinkle, or whatever, that was not the voice of me. That was the voice of my mom. My mom was critical of herself. She was a beautiful woman, but she had that inner voice, and I incorporated that until I recognized, wow, I'm just repeating. And you have agency over that inner voice. You should know better. I don't understand. He was not given 5 bags. He was given 1. I don't understand that. So if you could provide some clarity. Not good enough. I see on Instagram, you're so stupid. I should just remain silent. Nothing that comes out of my mouth is worthy. Just imagine, ladies, when you say that to yourself, what do you feel? You are too much. What do you feel when you hold that inside? And I'm grateful that you're giving yourself some awareness for this. So we're going to learn how to quiet that voice, and why doing it is your first step forward to recover real strength. And if you're here today to want to know a little bit about what real strength is, again, I want to say this to you because our classes are filling up. We are doing a group coaching practice, which is all about walking in core strength. So we want to tackle your inner critic as well as some other aspects, and help to teach you what does it look like to walk in core strength. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I want to say to you, let's identify the inner critic. So the inner critic is that voice that shames you, that condemns you, that compares you. It predicts failure, and it questions your worth. Would you like me to say that again? If so, say yes in the chat. Yeah. Gosh, you really named that, Jeannie. It is sad, but we're going to work on that. It's very real. Yeah. Okay, so your inner critic, write this down, is the voice that shames. So we're going to listen for the shame voice. We're going to listen for the voice that condemns us. Here's a big one. I mean, and if you scroll on social media, you're struggling with comparisons. That inner critic is the voice that compares me to everyone else. And guess what? Their life is always better than mine. Even though I don't know the details of it, I'm just seeing a snapshot of it. It's always better when you're comparing. My inner critic would predict failure. And the inner critic also questions your worth. So I've named 5. And ladies, where do you think the inner critic comes from? I'm just curious about what you understand the inner critic is comprised of. Like, where do we get this from? How does this happen to us? What are your thoughts? Where have you noticed? I named one. My inner critic comes from some internal voices from my mom. The devil. Yeah, sometimes the devil whispers things about us that are not true. I would say the enemy. I think he has a whole host of people working on us. Not people, but, hosts. Yeah, where do you think your inner critic comes from? I'm not sure our inner critic is based in reality. We're going to challenge that. Sometimes we've experienced a lot of criticism when we were younger. I remember some stories that I was told about myself. Diana repeats everything. Why do you think that did for my inner critic? Diana doesn't know how to shut her mouth. She says too much. She says things she shouldn't say. The truth of the matter is, Diana was very young, and she was repeating things that she heard and didn't know any better. Yeah, childhood wounding. Just comments people tell us. Maybe they even describe us. Sometimes parents will describe children one another in front of them, and they may mean well, but sometimes the way that we take those words, those descriptions of us, we maybe internalize that as wrong, shameful, not good. Sometimes that inner critic voice, as you have named in the chat, comes from abusive or controlling relationships where we allow someone else to interpret who we are, and we take what they say as a part of our identity. They're seeing us through their eyes, or they're seeing us through maybe the eyes of wanting to manipulate us. And so keeping us weak, keeping us small really fits the agenda and their relational style. So I'm going to name that as well. So childhood criticism, abuse or controlling relationships. I mean, and as I'm naming these, just think of a person that pops into your mind. Write that down. That's Holy Spirit awareness. I want to be cautious around this criticism I received as a child. These names that were spoken over me or about me. I want to be aware of abusive and controlling people in my life who I need to have my guard up with. And the other inner critic, which I wonder how many of you struggle with this, and maybe sometimes you're not even aware, but perfectionism. That you've said, I've got to get it right. I've got to get it perfect. You know, I have to be the best expert on the screen in my life, at work. I've got to be the best cook at the gathering. What is that perfectionist voice that tells you you're not enough, maybe in any capacity that you step into? I remember when my daughter was little, she had a perfectionist attitude. She would not do anything unless she could do it right the first time. Can you imagine trying to learn a bike and expecting to do it perfect the first time? And if you have that mentality, that's a bit of perfectionism. And so just noticing that, notice what that does to your inner peace and your physical body. Tension, carrying it all. Yes. I love that. I love that, Abigail. Progress is enough. I'm still learning. These are words you can take with you. Your inner critic also comes from trauma or rejection. We make meaning and we speculate about experiences that we have that may or most likely, I would say, are not rooted in the truth about who we are and what we are. And one thing I want to say to you, that if you're contemplating walking in the core strength of who you are and what that looks like from a biblical perspective, I do want to invite you to our Walking in Core Strength group coaching. We are going to be starting the first week of March. There are some times left in our groups for you to take a peek at. The link for that is leslievernick.com/group coaching. And we will talk about speaking truth to yourself, rooting out those lies, walking in who you are destined to be, designed to be, as we help you identify that, speaking truth to yourself, not the lies that you've incorporated or that you've heard. So I want to say to you that brain science tells us that every time you replay these self-critical thoughts, your brain strengthens those pathways. They become very hardwired and to who you are. So your brain, but the good news is that your brain is neuroplastic. We didn't think that. I would say 20 years ago, we didn't really know this, but we do know now. Well, maybe 30 years ago. What we do, I would say 20 years ago. What we know now is that the brain is neuroplastic, and it means that your brain can grow new neural pathways, ways of being, ways of behaving, ways of thinking, and ways of looking at yourself. And I want to say to you that it is really important what we speak to ourselves and what's ruminating in our minds. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between listening to yourself and talking to yourself. And I want you to integrate that with biblical truth. So how many of you can take a moment with me and just retrain your brain with the truth? How many of you feel inner condemnation? Just put a thumbs up or a yes in the chat if you feel inner condemnation. And I'm going to raise my hand too. There are many ways in which I experience that. And what could be different if you take a moment and you allow this belief, this truth, to resonate with you, and you choose to receive it as truth. There is now no condemnation for you who are in Christ Jesus. No condemnation. Forgiven, seen perfect in God's eyes. There is no condemnation. So what would it look like for you to receive Romans 8:1 and just, I want to use the word bask in that for a moment. There's no condemnation. And so if you have the perfection critic, you might be saying to yourself, if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. If you have a comparison critic, you might be saying everyone else has it together but you. If you have the shame critic, you might be saying you ruin everything. The fear critic, don't try. You're just going to fail. And here's a good one for us, ladies. The spiritualized critic, God must really be disappointed in you. And if you're like me, sometimes I can't get to this specific thought, but I feel it. And so you might start with the feeling, like I just feel sad about who I am, like God must feel this too. And then come up with the thought that's identified with that. Yeah, busted comparison. Yeah. I see so many of you are naming the ways in which you're struggling. It's hard to be in places where you're taking in negative voices, where you're experiencing rejection, where you maybe have a toxic workplace. And this is why this work is important, because you are out there among others, and the enemy will use that to defeat you, to destroy you, to distract you, and exhaust you. So I'll repeat them again for you. I see some of you are asking to hear those again. And I'm going to take a sip real quick. And I type in the chat which one you hear the most often. The perfection critic. It says, if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. The comparison critic. Everyone else has it together but you. The shame critic. You ruin everything. You're not enough. Fear critic. Don't try. You're just going to fail. And the spiritualized critic is God must be disappointed in you. Which one of those resonates most with you? Perfection, comparison, shame, fear, or spiritualized? And you don't have to be a victim of your thoughts. And you may need some help identifying that. You may need some coaching around that. That's what we're here for, ladies. That's why we're inviting you to group coaching experiences, because you'll be with a group of other women who are also on the same journey to uproot these lies that you believe and find some confidence and some grounding in who you are meant to be in Christ. And it's so helpful to be in a group of other women who can witness with you, who can be safe with you, so that you can really be who you are and name these and move through them. So I see your name, staying silent. The God critic. Yep. Comparisons. So is there a phrase that matches for that goes on in your mind? And I've shared in another of the Facebook Lives, mine was I don't even know if it's the failure critic, if I would name it that. Yeah, I would say it's a combination of it's a fear. You can't do that. You're not going to be able to do that. So hearing these thoughts, I want to say to you, lights up your amygdala. When you believe this, when you're ruminating on these thoughts, and it may be subconscious, you may not even know. That's why we're bringing awareness to this. The whole point of the topic today is to bring awareness to what's happening in that inner critic you have. And so when this inner critic is speaking to us, it's triggering stress. It's lighting up our amygdala. And recognizing the critic calms your alarm system. So if you're here today and you're resonating with this, name it, write it down. Notice the shift in your body. This inner critic will impact you emotionally. It will induce anxiety, shame, and depression. It will impact you relationally. I might engage in people pleasing. I might avoid conflict and have difficulty setting boundaries. And ladies, all of the things that I'm naming to you, we work on in our Walking in Core Strength. So if this is resonating with you and you feel like it's time for you to do some work, please join us. All right, spiritually. When I'm experiencing the inner critic, it affects me spiritually. I may feel unworthy of God's love. And guess what we do when we do that, ladies? When I'm feeling unworthy, I distance myself from God. I hide from him. I feel shame. And the inner critic affects us behaviorally because we may engage in procrastinating. We overthink, again, as you had said earlier, emotionally exhausted, and we self-sabotage. So if I say to you, think of a recent situation where your inner critic influenced your behavior, type one word to describe how it made you feel. What is a recent situation where you faced an inner critic and it influenced your behavior? And put one word in the chat to describe how that made you feel. How did that make you feel? I have a friend who is just adorable, and she has a true talent and a true gift for wardrobe. And she always comes, I would say, is the term dressed to the nines. She's just adorable. And if I allow my inner critic to be alive when I'm with her, I'm evaluating what I'm wearing, what I put together. Wishing I had the talent she had, but I'm not in my experience with her just enjoying her. Yeah. I'm self-conscious. I'm uncomfortable. Yeah. And thank you for naming that. The truth causes discomfort. You end up being silent. Yeah. You feel little. Absolutely. So, what are you noticing as we're calling attention to the inner critic? What are you saying to yourself right now? And I want to challenge you in this. Are you saying to yourself right now, I can't change this? I can't overcome this? If you're saying that, I'd like to know, do you resonate with not being able to change it? Not being able to be different? Is that a yes? Or is there hope that you can choose to be different, that you can overcome this inner critic? So is it hope? Or is it a no? I feel defeated. What might that be for you? What are you saying to yourself right now? What's one thing the inner critic said to you today? I'm trying to think as I looked around. I want you to name it and separate from it. Your hope is to become an overcomer. We're going to carry that forward. So think about something that your inner critic might have spoken to you today or recently. I love that. Ladies are coming through with hope. You can work on you. Now remember, your brain is neuroplastic. You're not set in stone, no matter how old you are. I've heard people say, I'm never going to change. I'm already too old. That's a lie. I don't want you to be hopeless. We want to offer you hope. All right. So notice what you're saying to yourself right now, what your inner critic is saying to you. And if your inner critic is saying to you, this is hopeless, I want you to say to yourself, this is my critic. This is not my truth. And you want to challenge those lies that you believe about yourself and asking, is this true? And if it's true, what evidence do I have to support that? Now, I might say some things are true and that we have evidence to support that. It might be true that I'm not a great cook. And am I critical of myself about that, or have I accepted that? Yeah, I don't care. But now if I said I can't cook to save my life, is that true? No, it's not true. There's no evidence to support that I do cook to support my life. Yeah. So if you've named your critic and what they're speaking to you, what's one evidence that contracts your critic's lie? So in other words, if you're saying, I'm such a failure, you might replace that with, I made a mistake and I'm still growing. If you're saying no one cares about me, you might shift into, I am loved by God and I'm not alone. If you say, I am defeated, you might step into, it's not over yet. I feel defeated in this moment, but I have another opportunity. Yeah, and I get that. And so ladies, you're naming feelings. You're naming hopelessness. You're naming defeated. You're naming feeling insurmountable. Those are feelings. What thoughts are tied to those? We can't just reach in and change our feelings, but we can talk to ourselves differently. So what's that anchored in? If you're saying, I'll never be loved, you might want to shift into, I am deeply loved by God. And I'm worthy of being in healthy relationships. You can, yes. So you want to change your thoughts to be accurate and believable. So instead of saying, what's wrong with me? I can't do this. Say, this is hard. I'm learning and I can take the next step forward. I heard Lori saying, I can take one step. That's all it takes is one step. So I'm going to give you some steps. The first thing we're going to do is quieting your inner critic, right? We're going to notice the voice. It's not the emotion. We're going to notice the voice. What are you saying to yourself right now? You're going to name it, and then you're going to separate from it. You're going to label it, this is my critic. This is not my truth. We're going to search for the truth. It feels like the truth. It's been with you a long time. You've been walking in it. You're not even right. It feels like a part of you. So that's why we're naming it, externalizing it. And we're going to label it critic, not truth. And then their next step is going to be to challenge that lie. And when we challenge that lie, we ask ourselves, is this really true? What evidence supports this? And you may need some help with that. We do work on this quite extensively in our coaching groups. Because sometimes it just feels like it's a part of you and you get a little stuck. But asking yourself, what is the evidence that supports this? What's the evidence that doesn't support this? And then you want to replace it with a truthful statement that is accurate and believable. And you want to speak to yourself with compassion. So instead of saying something like, what's wrong with me? Again, you want to say, this is hard. I'm learning and I can take steps. It's also really important to renew your mind daily. In the area that you're struggling in, you really want to look for biblical truth and objective truth as well. My favorite thing to do when I'm looking for biblical truth, I'm a little bit of a cheater. I don't dig through the whole Bible. I go out to Google and I'll ask it, what does the open Bible say about God's love for me? Grab a few scriptures and there you go. Instant renewal for the day. Just meditating on that. So renewing your mind daily, you can do that in any number of ways. Scripture meditation, choosing gratitude, repeating the truth to yourself, looking in the mirror and speaking the truth to yourself because your brain doesn't know it's not you. Journaling. And every time you replace your critical thoughts with the truth, you strengthen your emotional and your spiritual core and your inner stability. So say it along with me. Every time I replace my inner critic with truth, I'm strengthening my core. And so what is one truth that you're going to carry forward from what we're talking about today that you can speak to yourself, ladies? What's one truth? Put it in the chat. What might that be? What's coming up for you now? What's one truth you want to take away? And again, if you're feeling like it's too much and you're overwhelmed, we're talking about one step, one sentence, identifying one truth. There you go. I am worthy to be loved. Anchoring in truth. I am enough. Love it. All right. All right. So I want to say to you, all right. Okay. So I want to invite you to connect to your core strength emotionally, relationally, spiritually. This inner critic is going to weaken your core. I've given you some steps to move forward. Yes, you're naming it. All right. So again, as we close for today, we're going to end a little early. I want to invite you to walking in core strength. In this group, you're going to learn to identify and respond to critic messages. You're going to get practical tools for strengthening the core in your life. You're going to receive support and accountability for applying what you learn. You're going to share your wins and your struggles in a safe manner. So if you're ready to stop letting the critic run your life, let's do it together. So your inner critic may be loud, but I want to say to you, it is not God's voice. God convicts you and he guides you, but he never shames or condemns. You are not broken, you are becoming. So I want you, as we leave for today, put in the chat one truth that you've learned about yourself, about your inner critic, or possibly one lie that you're ready to stop believing, or one truth that you're going to speak over yourself today. All right. And I want to thank you for being with us today. Just put in the chat one takeaway that you're going to take with you from our time together today. All right. So I want to say happy Friday. I can listen to my shepherd. I am worthy. What is it that you want to believe about yourself? How about I'm capable? I can do this. I can choose to take one step. I can calm my body when I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm not alone. Some people may not understand me, but I'm not alone. Sometimes I fail, but that doesn't define me. My worth is rooted in Christ, not just my performance. My feelings are valid. God meets me in my emotions. I love this. I'm an independent woman. I don't need an outer critic. I love that. That is so good. I'm worthy. Yeah. I am lovable. I am loved and I am worthy. All right, I'm going to put this in the chat for you ladies. Just a little takeaway for today. I have summarized what I have shared with you so that you have it in a 6-step format. And we have a Facebook Live coming to you next week, which will be on Monday. It will be Susan at noon with You're Not Too Much, but maybe you've been doing too much. And I want to thank Nancy. You don't see her, but she's here supporting us all today. So as we walk away, and if you're watching the replay as well, what's your big aha moment from this teaching today? Someone is saying the sound is bad. The sound is, oh yeah, it's just you, Janice, I think. I don't hear anything else about the sound. All right. Thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful weekend.